Hello and welcome for a new video. Today we're gonna see Pulumi, as you might have guessed from the title, and we're gonna create a simple project in which we're going to see how to create a Pulumi project from scratch. We're gonna create some resources in Azure, and we're gonna do a few more things. So the tools that you're gonna need to follow along is gonna be Brew, Node.js, know a little bit of TypeScript, and an Azure account. So the first step to do is to install Pulumi, and I've already done it, so I don't need to do anything like this. Then we need the Azure CLI, which also I got installed, which I don't need. Then we need to do an login to log in into our Azure account. You're gonna open the browser. Of course, you need an active Azure subscription for this. Other than that, if you have multiple accounts, you need to set a subscription ID so that you can set the subscription that you want to use this for. And well, with this preamble, what we can do, we can start by checking the locations of our Azure service. Why do we need this? We need this because when we start a new Azure project, with Pulumi, we need to specify which region we want. So you can filter this table, and just doing an example using a filter with grep, because this is quite large, therefore can be handy to know that with the grep command you can just display the items that you need. So in my case, for example, I'm in Australia, therefore I'm going to check what's available for Australia, and I can use this by checking this command. So let's start by creating a new project, and I'm gonna call this project Pulumi new Azure TypeScript, and this is going to create and set up this set of files. So call also Pulumi tutorial. We're gonna keep everything like the same, etc. The location, as instead of West US 2, I want to use Australia East. And now what is gonna happen here is that Pulumi by default uses npm for install. However, if you use a different package manager, you can actually change this. And the way you do this is basically, as soon as you could actually stop this from running right now, but what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna show you what I've done to make it work with pnpm. So I'm rerunning the install process with the pnpm because it's the package manager of choice for me, and I am basically doing the installation of all of those things. Now in my command line, as you can see, next to the fact that I'm using my account in Azure, you can also see that I have this one that is my Pulumi name, because during the setup of Pulumi, you will also be asked to log in their cloud provider. So let's have a look at the project that has been just created. We have an index.ts, which is of course are the items that we want to create. Then it's basically this is our infrastructure as a code. The package JSON node modules, I suppose they need no introduction. pnpm lock is just because I use pnpm. Then we have this pulumi.yaml, which is you can see this a little bit like the Node.js package JSON equivalent for Pulumi, where you basically define the name of the Pulumi tutorial or of the Pulumi project and a short description. Then we have the dev, where it's basically you're gonna have configs, but other than that, in this file, if you're gonna have passwords, you're gonna have an hashed password in here. Then we have a git ignore that is basically coming from Pulumi as well. So let's have a look at the index.ts that has been generated by Pulumi. What is going to happen is that we have a resource group which is named resource group, and then this resource group is going to be accessed in different places by specifying the name modifier. We can specify a storage account named SA, and it's going to be created under this resource group with this SKU and of this type. This is like the cheapest version you can get. And then we have the storage account keys, which is going to give us the storage accounts for Azure. Then what we can do, we can create a new terminal, and from here we can run Pulumi app, and this is gonna deploy this initial stack. Before this is actually created, what is going to happen is simply that Pulumi is going to create to ask us if we want to actually create it. So here we want to say yes, and now it's gonna apply all of those resources, and this is gonna take a few moments. Okay, so our key has been created. Is our resource group has been created. You can check this by going inside the Azure portal. And now if we want to actually destroy it, we just have to do Pulumi destroy. And it's gonna ask us again if we need to confirm before this goes ahead. And Pulumi is gonna go ahead and destroy it. Alright, so we have created now. We destroyed everything that has been created previously, and here I've added some code for service bus and to create a sample queue inside my service bus. The location is going to be Australia East. However, you can also pull this from the environment variables. We can specify a namespace name, and finally which tier you want for your resource being created. On top of that, what I'm doing, I'm also creating a predefined queue inside this service bus account called my queue. So let's do a Pulumi app, and let's see what happens. If everything is correct, it should compile successfully and should be created. Make this one a little bit nicer. We say yes, we want to do this, compile nicely, and let's see what happens. Alright, you can see something happened because Pulumi could not complete the creation. The creation of the service bus namespace failed. However, as you can see, everything else is actually still going. And what's the reason for this? Well, is that basically Pulumi is going to try to do as many resources as possible, giving us the possibility to actually try to figure out what is wrong. And it's saying that this service name is invalid. Now, the reason why this is invalid is because the namespace name that should be only lowercase letters and no underscores or upper scores, and that's why it's failing. So if you get this error, that's the reason why. So if I run now Pulumi app once more, let's have a look at what is going to happen. Pulumi is gonna check the stack that was created previously, and is going to tell me what are the differences between the two, and give me, it's gonna say, well, I'm gonna create this one, I'm gonna create this one. Of course, the storage queue could not be created because it depends on the service bus. So we go ahead, we say yes, and now Pulumi is gonna go ahead and create those two resources. While Pulumi keeps on going ahead creating the service bus in the queue, I wanna show you how we can get the namespace authorization rule. So this rule is required because what we want to do, this is actually a wrong variable name, service bus.name, resource name, and here we're going to create our namespace authorization rule with the rules of whoever has these keys can listen and can send within this service bus, within this service group. Alright, so what can we do? We should be able at this point to take the service bus variable and list the namespace keys. Okay, so I prepared this snippet of code here. However, what is going to happen is the resource group gets highlighted because the type output string is not assignable to type string. So what is going on in here? Essentially what is happening is this is because I decided to call things something else. However, those resources, they are an output of Pulumi. And what Pulumi tries to do is that Pulumi tries to get those values from a resource created, because each time you create a resource, actually, it's not just the name that you specify, it's also gonna get a random bit of a string to make the resource unique. So that's very similar to Terraform, if you ever used Terraform. So we have so how do we fix this? We need to use something called Pulumi all and Pulumi.apply. Essentially what those two functions allow us to do is to say, well, once those specified resources are available, give me those values as a string so that I can use them, because we don't know at which point in time those resources are actually going to be created. As an example, take a service bus, took 67 seconds to be created, and the queue took 1 second. You could do the code, everything with promises. However, Pulumi actually handles this for us and we don't need to worry about this. And also can streamline and parallelize the creation of those resources for us, which is honestly, frankly, really frankly. So how do we change this then? Well, the way we change this, I'm gonna show you in a second. We replace all of this code. I'm gonna just comment out so that we can actually see it. We are gonna have, and again, this is service bus name, because I've renamed this variable when I remade this presentation. So it's gonna say for all of these keys, please tell me the name, the authorization, and once those are available, the apply function is run. And now I can say service bus list namespace keys with this value. And now our connection string is will be basically keys dot primary connection string, and you can export this variable and use it within the project that you need to run. Alright, so far so good. What we can do now? Now we can do something like adding an app service. How about we try to make an app service that essentially is gonna serve something basic, and we wanna do an SQL database. I'm not actually gonna use it because it's outside of the purpose of this tutorial, but I am going to create an app service that serves a static web page, but could also be something else. So inside the terminal, we can set a SQL password. Make sure this is complicated enough. This is actually coming from my password generator. And of course did not like this. So it's gonna set this password, and now if I actually open the sidebar, so I can actually just do this, pulumi.dev.yaml, we can see that the SQL password has been encrypted with this value, which should correspond to this variable here, more or less. And what can we do now? Now we're gonna create our app service plan. So what the app service plan is gonna do, I'm gonna delete this run because it's actually unnecessary for the purpose of our demo. So we have the app service plan, is app service plan, so ASP is an app, and I'm gonna put it in the B1 basic tier, which is the cheapest one. And then the other bit we need is actually to create an SQL server and a database. So let's have a look at this other snippet of code that I have prepared. I have a username, which can actually be reused, so you can change this to be something like mydb user. So you can actually use it in different places. And from the config, I'm gonna require the password, the SQL password bit. So this string that we use in here can actually be used to set this require in here. And then we say create a new SQL server under the resource group we created, use this username. The password is gonna be this password, which is actually coming from the Pulumi setting files. And this is saying use version 12 of SQL Server. And inside the SQL Server, then we're gonna create a database. So let's have a look at what happens when we run Pulumi up. And as usual, this should work properly. This is running fine for now. Is seeing that 4 items have been created, therefore we can apply the changes, click yes, and wait for it to happen. So our new resources have been created correctly. And now what do we need to do? Now what we want to do is to create a storage container. And what we're gonna use is basically what we're gonna use a storage container, and we're gonna use a blob. On top of that, I've also created a file in here in the www root folder, which I've just created, and I've put an index.html in here, which is what is gonna be the contents of our web server. So what's happening here? I am creating a storage container. Inside the storage container, we say under which resource group we put, which is the initial resource group that we created. We're gonna use the storage account, the same storage account that we created at the beginning. And inside the storage account, we are gonna put, we are gonna remove public access, so you can only access if you are from Azure and this resource is assigned to you. And then we are gonna create a blob storage account inside the same resource group under the storage account and the storage container that we created just above. And the source, so the files are gonna be uploaded, are gonna come from this folder in here. So I run Pulumi up, and Pulumi is gonna create those 2 storage containers for us. Alright, so the resources have been created successfully, and Pulumi was pretty fast creating those resources. So now what we want to do, we want to create our web app. So the first bit we have to do is to create a blob SAS URL. And what do we need to do? We need to say, well, in our storage, give us the SAS output for the blob. And which blob do we want? We want to have the blob that is stored under this storage account, inside this resource group, inside this container. And also what we want to do, the resource, we're using this interpolate function, which is equivalent, it's quite similar to the apply, but essentially is kind of resolving this name, so that if we were to use these variables directly, this would result in an object. So if I just move this const x equal this, you are actually gonna see that this is a storage account and this is a Pulumi output of type string. So this is actually gonna compare it to something like object, which is not exactly what we want. So we can just remove this. We added this blob SAS, and then what we can do, we can get the token from this blob SAS using the apply function, which is gonna resolve all of this. and from this object that has been applied, we're gonna get the service SAS token. And where are we gonna use this token? We're gonna use it in the code blob URL, which is a URL where we're gonna get this blob. So we can do the interpolate function again to get the storage account name, the storage container name, the blob name, and finally the token coming from the function above. And finally we're gonna have this connection string. Finally, we can go and create our app. We can create a new web app under the same resource group, under the app service plan, which the app service has been defined. And we need this app settings website run from package is a Azure specific variable where our Azure service is gonna look inside this folder and gonna say, oh well, give me this URL, and that's how I'm gonna run it. On top of that, we have connection strings, which those variables are essentially gonna be instantiated and defined inside our Azure account for the server to be available. So we never need to remember the username, we never need to remember the password, because all of this is always taken care of for us. The password, I recall that was coming from the configs. If any one of these things change, then the resources are gonna be recreated. But if everything is running off Pulumi, then actually something we don't need to worry about. For example, the primary connection string. If anything in the space where you define the keys changes, then it essentially triggers refresh of those variables. So let's run one last time Pulumi app. And once more, I think we need to specify to say, hey, yes, run this for me. So everything has been created successfully, but I forgot to do this, where I actually want to know where the app has been hosted. So I'm gonna run the Pulumi app once more. So Pulumi just finished. This is our endpoint. And we can actually open it and we can see how our web app at this unbearable address has been created with the content subscribe. So that's everything for today. You're gonna find this code inside my GitHub. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a thumb up or leave a comment below if something was not clear. Thank you very much and see you next time. Bye bye.